afternoon. My name is Representative Isaac Schultz. I represent House District 10B, which is a large swath of central Minnesota to the north and east of the city of St. Cloud. So glad to be with you here this morning as House Republicans announce two priority bills today to prioritize Minnesota tax dollars for Minnesotans. And at the heart of this conversation is the concern for Minnesota families and their family budgets that are constantly squeezed with the rising cost of living across the board. And during the last 2 years, we saw a period of time where the massive, nearly $20 billion budget surplus was spent on a whole host of wasteful spending priorities. And key to our conversation today is the fact that our tax dollars were raised to the tune of $10 billion, and our tax dollars were spent and provided for people who are here in Minnesota illegally, providing for whether it's the North Star Promise or the medical assistance program. These are very expensive programs that Minnesotans frankly don't support. From a perspective of there are Minnesota families who are hurting in today's environment. Again, because of the rising cost of living that we have seen because of inflation and far too much government spending. And so today, the bill that we had introduced and that we will be prioritizing this session that I've introduced is the bill to stop the taxpayer funding of illegal immigrants here in Minnesota. And that alone can save over $100 million, hundreds of millions of dollars in future years. And I really want to frame this up through the lens of the family who's hurting in Minnesota. Because during this debate over the last 2 years, as Democrats prioritized illegal immigrants and funding their needs in Minnesota, it was the hardworking blue-collar families of Minnesota who were most hurt by this. I have one specific example from my own district of probably a lower-income family who lives just outside of Forreston that is struggling to get by. And they've been notified that they're getting kicked off of public assistance. And yet, at the same time that this was happening to their family, illegal immigrants were being given medical assistance. And that's plain wrong. And when we think of the host of needs that so many Minnesotans face, whether it's those in the disability community, whether they're veterans, or whether they're homeless, or whether we're considering the needs that we have in infrastructure across the state, we need to prioritize the finite amount of resources that we have in our state and to focus on the true needs of taxpayers here in Minnesota. So that is at the heart of my bill today, and a big reason why we are prioritizing as a House Republican caucus to stand with the people of Minnesota, the taxpayers of Minnesota, to support the people who are true American citizens and Minnesota residents. And that's our need and that's our purpose here today. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Representative Max Reimer.
Thank you, Representative Schultz, and thank you all for coming here. My name is Max Reimer. I represent District 28B in Chisago County. I think what the people of Minnesota need to know is that House Republicans are here every day working to shape policies that matter to Minnesota. In this light, we just had an election which was primarily predicated on illegal immigration. It's an issue in which most Americans feel very similarly about, that we need to protect our border, protect our people, and do things to ensure that we have illegal immigrants who are not committing crimes in our community. So this bill that I'm introducing is House File 16. And in essence, what it does is it mandates illegal immigrants suspected of committing a violent crime to be reported to ICE or any immigration authority at the federal level, as defined by Code 624.172, Subdivision 5. And then it does a second thing. It prevents city and local governments from withholding information from federal immigration authorities. In essence, this ends the practice of sanctuary cities, which makes our communities less safe, which endangers our neighbors, and which puts kids, especially legal immigrant kids, at risk in Minnesota. So what we're seeing here is an election which was just determined primarily by this issue of illegal immigration. In the past year and a half, we have seen multiple instances of violent crimes committed by illegal immigrants, one being a grotesque beheading that happened in Shakopee, and then another instance of a family being murdered in Coon Rapids. Just a week ago, we had several sexual predators who happen to be illegal immigrants arrested right here in St. Paul. So the focus here is to make sure that we are targeting illegal immigrants who commit violent crimes. This is a very narrow focus, and making sure that we have a collaborative approach with federal authorities who deal with illegal immigrants in this administration. And I think it's interesting because we've also had a Hennepin County attorney, we've had the mayor of Minneapolis, we've had a Minneapolis police chief come out and say that they were going to openly defy federal government and not cooperate with authorities of the federal government to make sure that these violent offenders are not in our neighborhoods. That should be unacceptable. That's what this bill helps address. And I gotta tell you, I'm really looking forward to having bipartisan support on this, like there was vast bipartisan support on the Lake and Riley bill. This is an issue which Minnesotans and Americans at large care about. So when Democrats, if they ever come back to work, when they come back to work, I fully anticipate and look forward in their participation in this type of legislation. This is what Minnesotans and Americans are demanding. And this is just what Representative Isaac Schultz and I just introduced is really part of a broader series of policies. I know Representative Engen, who is behind me, is going to have a few more policies that you will hear about in the coming weeks. But overall, we feel like the safety of Minnesotans and prioritizing the safety versus trying to protect illegal immigrants who are committing violent crimes is an issue that Minnesotans care about. We should have a collaborative approach with federal immigration authorities, not a hostile approach, so that we can all work together and make our communities safer. With that, we'll take questions. Thank you.
I guess if you could just address, you talked about the Lake and Riley bill.
Yes.
What's the difference in the state one? Is the federal one gonna be redundant? Some people may be wondering, what's the difference in the state bill that maybe either adds or complements the federal bill?
The state bill complements the federal bill in this way. We are saying that you cannot harbor or protect illegal immigrants who commit violent crimes if you are a local or a municipal authority. So again, I think that this is specifically needed in Minnesota because we've had a number of authorities come out and say they're not going to comply with the federal government at all. So my understanding of the Lake and Riley bill is that they will basically take them and put them in federal detention if they have committed a crime. This bill is to specifically address people who would withhold information on crimes like that.
What's the penalty? What would the penalty be?
Well, that depends on the actual statute of violent crime. Penalties are different, obviously, at the state level. What we're saying is if you are suspected of committing a violent crime under the law that I referenced before, that your information would be shared with ICE or federal immigration authorities.
If a local official doesn't do that, is there a penalty that falls upon the local official for failure to do what the acts calls on?
So the penalty, we can get into that later, I can address that later, but JR, if you wanna maybe address that real quick.
We'll have to get back to you.
And David, not JR, thank you.
Does this, some Republicans are interested in local control. I mean, is this going against local control, or your response to people who said this is local government should be able to set sanctuary city policies?
No, I think that this is a statewide issue, and Republicans certainly are interested in local control, but with that, local control conflicts with actual safety of our neighborhoods and what the federal immigration authorities are saying they need to get done, the information that needs to be shared with them. We think that's a necessity.
For the grants, is it just North Star and I think you said MA, it says Minnesota Care, or is it kind of anything like?
It is. This, the bill that I introduced, which was House File 10 earlier this session and will be reintroduced, is a bill that actually precludes any taxpayer dollars from going to support illegal immigrants in Minnesota. So that can be a whole host of things, and you can kind of dive in. There is some kind of umbrella approach language that's inside the bill that essentially goes after any taxpayer support for illegal immigrants in Minnesota. And that's what the bill does. So it's not just North Star Promise, it's not just Minnesota Care medical assistance, it is also legal services, that was a part of the dialogue these last 2 years, and any other service that's provided directly to illegal immigrants. Once again, Republicans stand firmly in legal immigration, and we want to see our communities, our state, and our country grow through the legal avenues that exist under law. And so long as there are individuals in Minnesota that are going to break the law to come here, they are not to receive taxpayer dollars, because at the heart of it, we have a finite amount of resources, and those resources need to be dedicated to the hardworking people of Minnesota who are in the greatest need.
Do you know if currently an applicant for these programs is asked about immigration status, meaning is there some data there that now you could go and find, or would you have to create that question on the form in order to enforce this?
Great question. So as it relates specifically to the North Star Promise Act, there's a host of eligibility requirements, and currently under law, you have the ability, if you are not a legal citizen and resident of the United States and of Minnesota, there is a specific process to play thatself out. This legislation would remove that. And then as it relates to medical assistance or Minnesota Care, you have seen that was just rolled out on January 1st of this year. And there is a specific way and a specific criteria and form for them to fill out if they do not meet the citizenship requirements currently in the United States. So it would be going after that. And there are a host of those things. Now, again, I mentioned the umbrella language that is inside this bill. As it relates to other programs that currently exist in state law, each of those would have to be addressed individually.
Representative Engen, do you want to preview any of your legislation?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here, guys. State Representative Elliot Engen, District 36A. A couple of the bills that we're going to be focusing on regards to the Attorney General, who's recently come out and said that he's not going to be working alongside the federal administration as they try to tackle this issue, but also actively engaging in a lawsuit with the feds on this. So I think we're looking at some legal avenues there. Stay tuned for more. But right now, a lot of people don't even know that stimulus checks, illegal immigrants are eligible for them. And with 68% of Minnesotans that are living paycheck to paycheck, we feel that that's wrong, and we think that Minnesotans are on our side with this.
Can you do something maybe unusual? How many of you guys are freshmen? We haven't had the opportunity to kind of become familiar with you because there's no floor action, there's no committee action. Would you mind just introducing yourselves? The ones we don't know yet, just say where you're from.
Sure. Hey, I'm Scott Van Binsbergen. I'm from Montevideo, which is made up of Chippewa, Renville, half of Meeker, and a portion of Candioi County. So, and I've been in small business for myself since for close to 30 years. So, and I'm excited to serve and to give back here in St. Paul.
Hey everybody, I'm Representative Cal Warwis. I'm from the Iron Range. We flipped a 96-year Democrat district. So I'm a 28-year minor and on the taxes and environment committees. And I'm very pleased to be here as a freshman and support these fine gentlemen. Thank you.
My name is Jimmy Gordon. I'm District 28A. That's Cambridge, Isani, parts of North Branch, and Bram up there. So formerly was a mayor of Isani, and yeah, the business owner is what I do. The pizza business is my full-time gig. So excited to be here and excited to be here to support this great legislation that we're putting forward today.
And again, I'm Max Reimer, District 28B. I'm right next to Jimmy Gordon's district. It's Chisago County. Dad of 3, husband, live in North Branch. Small business owner, so co-own a marketing agency and a mortgage company, and have been relatively involved in politics for a long time here in Minnesota.
Sorry to make you do that.
Any more questions about the specific legislation?
I was late, so I'm sorry if you guys already talked about this, but in terms of tracking, you know, how many taxpayer dollars actually go to undocumented immigrants, what are you guys using for that? Because I know it must be hard to do that.
Thank you for that question. As it relates to the amount of money that goes to illegal immigrants here in Minnesota, frankly, a lot of our government services are becoming overrun at this. And I don't want to just frame this just through the lens of Minnesota state government, but you can quickly go to neighboring Hennepin County and look at the number of government services that have been overrun or are completely depleted because that local government, under their own local control, has decided to support people who are here illegally. When it comes to Minnesota, it is in the hundreds of millions of dollars that is going to this. Throughout the last legislative session and as it was being debated to allow for Minnesota Care or this medical assistance to be provided for illegal immigrants, I was given a projection that it would be around $200 million. Now, Democrats in this state have sought to make Minnesota a top destination for illegal immigrants. And we know that if this path continues, and if this change to state law isn't brought about, we're gonna continue to see that increase over time. And we don't want Minnesota to be a top destination for illegal immigrants. And we wanna respect Minnesota taxpayers and ensure that we're fighting for the hardworking, blue-collar people of the state of Minnesota who are just living paycheck to paycheck and ensuring that their tax dollars aren't being spent to support people who are here illegally.
Isaac, could I jump in on that as well? It seems as if a lot of the state programs that we have currently are expressly, we have a disincentive to see that data. It seems as if Democrats haven't allowed us to track that. We need to do more to broaden that so that our data collections is better, but starting off with that question in mind, why don't we have that data? Why is it that we don't know how many folks are using the North Star Promise Act, or how many folks are on our medical assistance programs? We need to do more to figure that out, so wanted to add that.
And kind of circle back to, this family you mentioned who fell off, and was that a program that was capped, meaning it had a certain amount of money that ran out, or did they somehow fall out of eligibility for various reasons?
I appreciate you bringing this up because, like I said, when this proposal originally to allow for illegal immigrants to have medical assistance in Minnesota Care, the family who reached out to me was on that program. And they have a young family, I believe at least 4 kids under 10, and they are both two parents working to provide for their family. And as they reach that next stage and a growth in their job opportunities, they were eliminated from the program and left without health insurance for months until they were able to apply in the fall of that year. And I think that's just a prime example of what happens if you exceed an income threshold, or if you get a new job, you are removed from the Minnesota Care program at the same time that illegal immigrants are now allowed to have Minnesota Care.
Sorry, I'm circling back to the 2 million estimate.
200 million.
200 million. Where is that estimate coming from?
That was a piece of information that we had during the debate on the floor of the House. I don't have a specific point that I can point you to directly. That came from the conversation that we were having at the time. Like I said, I anticipate that throughout all of state government programs that number is actually far larger than that amount of money. And again, that was just specifically over Minnesota Care. And we know already some early projections on what the North Star Promise has meant for people who are here illegally. That number at this moment in time is just over $86,000.
On top of that, we actually have data that's now showing that Hennepin County in particular are using property tax increase revenue to directly fund illegal immigrant housing facilities. We've done some digging on this, and it seems like they continue to put more money towards this program, even going as far as to use FEMA emergency assistance money. So when that runs out, then what? Our property tax payers, are they on the hook for that as well to make up for that loss? Those are questions that we need to find out.
With all the misuse of funds on the federal level that we've found out last couple of days, have you guys looked into the misuse of funds that's possibly happened in Minnesota?
Well, I would just say broadly that Republicans' focus is to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse of state government dollars. What we saw and what President Trump has brought about here over the last few weeks is a return to fiscal responsibility. And certainly Minnesota is a key place where we need to get after this. I mean, when we look at the fact that we had a nearly 40% increase in the state budget in one budget cycle, that's purely unsustainable. And this is the tip of the iceberg of the waste, fraud, and abuse of Minnesota tax dollars. And this is only the first of many bills that will come forward this session to reduce and cut the waste in state government.
Sorry, President Kingdon raised a question. Does your bill go down to the local level, or does your bill just talk about state funds?
The bill specifically talks about state funds.
Mine will address that.
You will go down.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.